What's going on? Welcome to the Breakaway podcast. We got another Sunday conversation with one of my very good buddies. I love this guy. This guy's got energy off the charts. He loves Jesus. He loves sports. He's an Olympian, man. I mean, that's something that I wish I was able to be. But Anthony Watson's in the house. But before we get this conversation started, TPUSA Live, make sure you check that out every single Monday through Friday. We have some fantastic conversations on the couch. Drew Hernandez brings the heat on front lines. We also got Jack Posobiec. Make sure you tune into that, tpusa.com/live. Anthony Watson, welcome finally to the Breakaway podcast.
Jon Root, my big bro. This has been a dream, and I just wanted to say, and this is not giving you smoke, this has been my absolute favorite thing that you have added to the Turning Point thing, because as an athlete, it has always been something that I have dreamed of, to see people taking a stance against all the political stuff in sports, and you, my friend, have literally done that, so I am so honored. Thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be here with the most eligible bachelor of basketball, you know, the frontline man of football, you know, the single dude of soccer, everything sports related, coming here from TPUSA. I love it. All right.
Yep, welcome to the Breakaway podcast, sports and singleness. That's what Dude, there's no hype man like this guy right here, but I feel like that's what I really love about your energy, and also just you're unapologetically a Christian man, and you're going to talk about conservatism. And there's been an aspect of that I'm sure you've been trying to navigate in the sports realm, being an Olympian, because I know I've had to navigate that. I've shared that on previous podcasts, right, that, you know, this is what led to actually having the Breakaway podcast. This is why you need some non-woke sports talk and conversation, because you're not hearing this side of the argument. But how do you navigate that space as an Olympian?
Well, I mean, the only way that you can is through prayer before any and everything else. But as an athlete, the whole concept of being an athlete is taking the impossible and finding a way to do something. So as an Olympian, it's a lot harder, I would say, than most sports, because as Olympic athletes, beyond, you know, popular conception, we don't get paid anything. So to do the same amount of work as your Tom Brady's and your Steph Curry's and your Cam Newtons and all these high elite level athletes that are getting paid millions of dollars a year, you know, we have to do the exact same thing just for the opportunity to get that way. And so when you aren't getting money to help you, what is the next best thing? And that's personality. You got to have a good smile, got to be able to convince really rich people while their money that they work so hard for is better with me, so I can have a chance to go do something bigger. You know what I'm saying? So it's become a big game, but it's a lot of fun, though.
And that's why you're part of the Turning Point USA family. I mean, it's a TPUSA ambassador right here, and you're someone that definitely reflects all the values of Turning Point USA and the values that we want to see in our athletes as well. But give people a little breakdown of your story leading up to being an Olympian, because a lot of people, they think, oh, we got an Olympian in the house, he must have been Team USA. Tell us a little breakdown about how you were part of Team Jamaica.
Okay, so before I start losing any more followers on my social media, let me just set the record straight. I started with Team USA. So my dream ever since I was 6 years old, I remember watching the Atlanta Olympics when they were in the 90s, when they were in Atlanta, Georgia, and I watched Michael Johnson blow the field out as a sprinter. And I remember telling my dad, I was like, I want to be there and do that. And he told me three things. He said, trust God, work hard, and surround yourself with people that make good decisions, and God will take you anywhere. This was his advice. So you fast forward through high school and college, I was running track and field, AAU, USA track and field, U18 leagues, all of these things to help get me in the door. And then right before like college ended, I was 21. This was at the peak of qualification season for the London Games, and I was running unattached at a meet. I decided in the heat of the moment to try and do an event that I wasn't good at, but because I could enter it for like more points and like another chance to qualify, I tried doing triple jump. I did 2 bounds, and on my 3rd bound, tore my MCL, patella, and meniscus in 1 tear in my right knee. And so my dreams of trying to do anything in track and field were kind of shot at that point. And so the year after that, I took a year to myself.
What year was that you tore?
2012.
Yeah.
The beginning of 2012, because the Olympics were in August that year. Mm-hmm. So this was like June. So
I mean, that's crushing then. It's
oh my
right
goodness,
around the corner.
You know, all those years of like not really going and hanging out with friends because, you know, like I was at practice and, you know, all the time away from family at track meets and stuff. Mm-hmm. So to have it all kind of crumble was kind of like devastating. And so I took a year to just kind of figure things out. And then I went through every single Team USA page at the time because I was determined. I was like, I'm going to be Olympian in something. And then I saw that boxing and handball were the only summer sports that had like tryouts. And then I went to winter and I saw that bobsled and skeleton was the only Olympic sport for Team USA that had open tryouts. So what they do is they test you in a combine, which is your strength, speed, agility. So they have you do a 45-meter sprint, broad jump, a shot toss, then your max in a power clean, and then in a back squat. And so they base and kind of jumble everybody through the numbers there. So I tested second highest in the nation in that test. Then I was invited to what's called a school where they basically teach you the beginnings of how to do skeleton. And for those of you that don't know skeleton, it's when you lay on your stomach going head first, 4 inches off the ice on a little lunch tray looking sled that your head hangs off and your knees hang off. And you kind of do this Macarena dance down there to make sure that you don't hit walls going head first at 85 miles per hour.
AKA, ladies and gentlemen, you have to be insane to want to do this. You're literally going down on basically just this ice block.
Basically, yeah. So, and everyone's like, how do you not hit things? I was like, well, once you hit it once, you make sure you don't hit it again. I was like, and when you slam into walls, that kind of stuff, you can brace and kind of feel it coming. But like the worst pain is like when you're going super fast and a wall just grazes you. When you graze a wall, it feels like someone took a knife and just like slashed you. And
you're basically a runaway train.
Exactly. Yeah. And
then so how fast are you going?
My fastest speed that I have ever been clocked at was 84 miles per hour in Whistler, Canada, on the fastest track in the world.
This is not like the Matterhorn, people. This is not like, oh, this is a leisurely, like I'm going to go through this mountain pass.
Oh, no, if
like,
you want
bro,
leisure,
do
curling. I was like, you could fall asleep in that sport and still have an intense match.
So basically, you had your dreams just crushed for the summer games, and then you're just determined, I'm going to go join the skeleton, which is funny. Like, this kind of sounds similar to Cool Runnings.
Oh, my gosh.
This is literally Cool Running, and then that's why we have the Jamaican tied to this, because it's like, Yul Brenner, what are we going to do?
Well, I mean, like, if you could see me now, yes, I am the Yul Brenner of the Jamaican squad, yes. So if any of you get that reference.
I see pride. I see power.
I see power.
I see a badass mother that
don't take no crap off of nobody. Again. Man, now I really want to watch that movie. But we're boycotting Disney and Disney Plus and Netflix. Anything entertainment.
Watch the old ones.
So I left Team USA in 2016 because of political reasons. You know, in the U.S. program, like a lot of programs that you see, there's favoritism, there's politics, and the whole program was being rewritten to favor specific athletes. And so my realistic shot of getting a chance at an Olympics wouldn't have come until now had I stayed in the U.S. program. So because I have dual citizenship through my father, who immigrated here legally as a citizen way back in the 70s, I had dual citizenship through him to go and compete for Jamaica. Now, this was a unique experience because Jamaica, unlike bobsled, had never had a skeleton athlete, so it was my chance to make history as well. So when I got to the Olympics, I wasn't only just there for the first time, but I was the first Jamaican ever to compete in Olympic history in that sport in a Winter Olympics ever. And so with that honor came a lot of hardships, because when I joined the Jamaican team, I thought I was going to be accepted. I thought people were going to appreciate me, and they hated me. So this is where the whole
like
myth
your
of
teammates and coaches, or
my
the citizens,
teammates, my coaches, the citizens, and this is where the myth of white privilege broke for me, because I was mistreated and abused by people of color from a country that I belonged to through inheritance, but they didn't accept me because they said, because I'm from America, I'm so-called from this bougie lifestyle where I have everything because I come from the land of prosperity. So in my Olympic season, I was left out of group chat meetings. I had funding withheld from me. I had all of my races and training sessions taken away. So, and then I had no funding whatsoever. Everything was given to the bobsledders, all the housing. I had to house myself. I was kept away from everybody else.
You had to spend your own money?
I had to spend my own money. And it was literally coming down to decisions every day when I was running out of money. Am I going to feed myself today, or am I going to train? And with the little money that I had, I kept going to training. I had lost 16 pounds in about 2 months. You know, my parents, both my mom, dad, and my siblings, I have 3 sisters, all took up part-time jobs and were literally working themselves to the bone just to put money in my account so that I could keep going. You know, so it was a very trying time. And as an athlete, you know, like I was going through the mental trials of whether or not this was worth it or not. And then not only that, but then there's this personal guilt that I see my family literally struggling as it is, but then actually struggling and adding to that because they believed in me and this goal that I had. Watching my dad work 2 part-time jobs on top of being a full-time pastor, watching my mom work a part-time job at the time, and then, like having her go through that. My sisters working double shifts, triple shifts, and then everything that they did was all just like, would come into my account at that time. And then I was overseas in Germany. I ran out of money. The Jamaican team was staying at a really nice posh place, so I secretly reached out to one of my teammates that still liked me, and I was like, I am out of cash. I have nowhere to go. All of my friends are literally leaving to go to European Championships tomorrow. I said, can I just stay with you for a night, 2 nights? And I just need some place to sleep so that I can, stay safe. And this was in Utah. Let me correct that. So I go to the place that they're staying at, and in the night, one of my teammates that hated me, and she was sabotaging me, saying all this stuff to my federation so that she could have a better chance at qualifying and more chances at getting funding from the federation than me because she wanted to be the only one that qualified that year. So when I show up there...
So they basically thought,
real
quick too, is they think that just some privileged American is rolling in and is trying to take opportunities away from the nationals that have worked their whole life and actually represent Jamaica. And they felt like you were basically just a fake Jamaican, just worried about yourself. So don't give him money. Don't give him your time. Make his life a living hell.
Exactly. And instead of them actually doing that, they did it in subtle ways like I had explained before, taking certain things away, making it harder so that I would quit, rather than it being obvious that they were trying to do things to make it, to literally work me out. To say. And so, you fast forward a few nights, and then I go there. Throughout the night, the federation grabbed the team, and they bust them out to Canada, and when I showed up there, nobody was there. For 3 days, I slept under a porch in the middle of winter in negative 20-something degrees in Utah. It got so bad, I broke into the track in Utah, climbed up to the ski jumps with the thought to jump. And in my last little phase of glory, I called my dad with like 4% on my phone left. And then I'm just in tears, and I'm like, Dad, I'm like really struggling. And I was like, is this what I'm supposed to do? And he told me, he's like, I was praying for you, and God told me that you were in trouble. So what's going on? And I told him everything as quick as I could with as much phone power that I had left. And then he said, you can be in the center of God's will and all hell breaks loose. Don't quit. And then my phone cut out. And then, the next day the answer came, but in a weird way, the police show up. All of my stuff gets ransacked because people in the neighborhood were just like, someone's living under the porch, and the police came, and then I told them the entire story, and their first response was just like, Dag, your federation is some ass. I can't say it. No, I was like, they some bad people.
Man, you might as well say it. We can bleep it out because you were getting to a point where you thought you'd just end it.
Yeah.
That's like you got they messed you up so much that you thought about like it's not worth living anymore.
And this, John, is the first time that I have told anybody that. Mm-hmm. I have literally kept a lid on it because, my dream is to still get into one more Olympics, because after that Olympic experience that I had, I have a really big chip on my shoulder that I really want to go and like get some revenge on some people athletically.
Well, and that's why I appreciate you bringing this up too, because it's even tough to bring this up in just like an intimate setting with people and there's no cameras or microphones around. But here, what do you think? Because you're a godly man. You talking about your dad's a pastor, and in moments like this, you're trying to figure out value and worth, and just trying to stop this roller coaster that you're on. Mm-hmm. Like, what gave you that peace and that sense of value?
Well, peace didn't come in that exact moment. I mean, it did, because it was nice to hear that, I was on somebody else's heart when I hadn't said anything. They spiritually were aware of what I might have been struggling with, or something was wrong and something wasn't happening that should have been. And what changed for me was when I finally got home to feel the love and community of the church is what got me through it. And then when I was able to get to the Olympics, when I looked back and saw how God provided every single step of the way, when I had prayed for something, God had put it on someone's heart, and this is the answer that came here and there. And what that taught me was that I got a lot more grit in me than I gave myself credit for. But that's the story of Olympians worldwide. We take time, years away from family. We miss birthdays. We missed holidays. We miss life with the people that we love and grow up with for not just an opportunity, but for the chance, which is a bigger margin that you might miss. Just the chance to get to represent your country someplace. And then the suicide rate, the depression rate, the anxiety rate, the medicated rate, amongst Olympians that spend everything, because you have people like myself that are in their 30s that have been doing this for years and never made an Olympics, that now basically have to start their adult life from scratch. And it literally is so intimidating at times. And so when I finally made it there, I had finally come to a place where I said, you know what, God, I'm here, which meant that all of that time that I spent praying was worth it, because I'm able to say that you got me here. And that's the testimony that I was given from that. And that's what I use now. And so through sports, I feel like athletics teaches you a lot about yourself as an individual, because it's all about pushing limits, and it's all about breaking mental barriers about what you see as physically possible to be done, to work hard to make what you know as impossible to be possible, which is why you hear, we love March Madness because of all the Cinderella stories that we hear of small colleges that practice fundamentals and aren't about flashiness, that, come down to big pressure moments and they shine better than all of these other D1 schools. You same thing in football, the same thing in the Olympics. It's all about the personal journey of the individual, who then puts it into a unit that unit then functions together. And it teaches you a lot about life. And so in that, what I learned as an individual going through that was that this was the journey that God put me on. And I learned a lot about myself, but I also saw him in a lot of areas too. Being able to travel through Europe, through Asia, Canada, and the United States. One, I got to see more places that he's created, interact with a lot more people. And, it taught me more about the world that we know, rather than just seeing it through most people, like how they do through a phone screen.
And I know most people are just getting to know you now through the Breakaway podcast that might not have heard of you before, but it's hard to think about someone like you that would have their spirit so crushed. Because, dude, guys, I know you're just tuning in here, but this guy right here is just one of the happiest people I've ever met. So when you hear a story like this, where it's like you're just joyful all the time. And I think there's so much importance in telling a story like this, because it's like anybody can be going through something where it is so dire, where you're wondering if I even have value anymore. But a lot of people want to know, what happened after the police showed up? What happened with, Team Jamaica and everything, and then, leading up to the next Olympics here.
Okay, so this is what happened. So the police show up. I get through all of that. They drive me to the airport, and one of the police officers was nice enough to buy me breakfast and give me $100 to feed myself.
Wow.
I slept in the lobby of an airport for a week, and I was able to charge my phone. I was making constant calls to home just so that I had some place to rest my head for a little bit. And then I finally made it home. And when I had gotten home, I was my body was in starvation mode. And as an athlete, you know what that is. It's like when you go so long without food, you can have a sip of water and one grape, and your stomach will start telling your brain that it's full so that it doesn't get hungry anymore. And it stores everything because it doesn't know when its next meal is going to be there. I was so sick, I couldn't stomach anything when I got home. I slept for about 3 days because I was so exhausted. And right before Christmas, I was supposed to be in Switzerland racing. And my sister, I didn't see her the entire time that I was there. She's a ER nurse, so she worked double and triple shifts when she had no shifts scheduled for 2 weeks straight. And as soon as it was Christmas Day, I was supposed to leave the 26th. Christmas Day, she gave me a present, and it was a $10,000 check of everything she had earned in that 2.5 weeks of overtime and pay.
Goodness.
And she said, I believe in you. We're praying for you. Now go qualify. And that literally spurred me to beat everybody else. So I went to Switzerland, had a really good race, flew from Switzerland to Lake Placid, New York for my last qualification race of the season. And then lo and behold, my sled got stuck in Switzerland. So I had to wait a week, and it was the day before the race that it finally came. I drove through a blizzard in the middle of the night to go grab my sled, drove all the way up, had 2 of the worst runs ever on no sleep and a bunch of Red Bull. And then the next day crushed the field and placed in the top 5. And it was that race there that solidified me as somebody that was in contention for the Olympics. And so it got more complicated as that, because how we qualify is the top ranked 60 athletes are automatically in qualification, but each country only has a certain amount of quota spots. So you can max have 3. So if you're Team USA, I'm Team Germany, and you had a certain amount of athletes that placed in a certain racing rank throughout the year, you would qualify for 3 spots. And then as the Germans, I have like athletes that are in like the top 10. So I qualify 3 spots, but I can only take my top 3 Germans. You can only take your top 3 Americans. Then the rest, it goes down the list. So I was in the bubble. It was a toss-up between it was Israel, Italy, Luxembourg, myself, and Ireland for one last spot. And so Israel got a quota spot because Switzerland didn't want it. Austria didn't send anyone, so Italy got the spot. Germany forfeited one of their spots, so Luxembourg was offered that spot, and it was down to me and Ireland for the very last spot. And because of that doping scandal through that Netflix special, Icarus, if you watched it.
Icarus is one of the best documentaries you'll ever watch in your life. Like, yeah, it's just fascinating.
That story of Icarus is how I qualified for the Olympics.
What?
The guy who won gold in 2014, Alexander Trechikov, who was in that special.
I remember that.
Tested positive, and they banned him because he was the final spot that the Russians were going to take. And when Russia got rid of that 3rd spot, they gave it to Jamaica.
Holy smokes.
So I'm very closely connected to Icarus.
What a fascinating story, because everything leading up to that moment, you think, all the sacrifice I made individually, what my family has made, and then it leads to this where it's like, there's one spot.
There's one spot, and down to the very minute details of, because Russia had 3 spots, and they were going to give it to their another Russian national athlete, and this was at the height of like Icarus being like the top trending story, like the whole Russian doping scandal, because most people won't say this. So I'm giving you a free bite here. Russia, through oil, funds a lot of the Olympic tournaments, a lot of the Olympic events, and they are one of the biggest silent sponsors of every Olympics that takes place, which is why whenever you hear about the Alexander Trechikovs, the Sharapovas of the Russian community that have been caught doping and they get suspended, their suspensions are magically lifted after a couple of weeks. They miss a big event, then it's like, well, we couldn't find it or due to lack of evidence, and then that's when they're brought back. And so
it just ends up being out of the news cycle where it's like, oh, we did something about it. Look at like we are promoting fairness in sports, and then 2 weeks later it's like, no one's talking about it anymore. Put them in.
Exactly. And so it's got athletes everywhere outraged because you see what happens with like U.S. athletes and everybody else that, like I don't smoke weed. And the other girl that got busted for it for Team USA, and then she missed out on her Olympics. And I mean, like, look, I
actually need to figure out her name. I know that because that was such an interesting story because in general, she knew it was wrong because, I mean, even the fact that like, if you can go get blazed and then go blaze everybody on the track, like that's impressive to me.
That's also a PED. If it's helping you have an advantage over your opponents, that's why weed is banned. And I'm a big proponent of that because as an athlete, that doesn't serve you any physical benefits outside of just numbing pain and making you elusive to
Sha'Carri Richardson.
Sha'Carri Richardson. So,
but she knew it was wrong. So that's why I know I was saying on the podcast here is like, there's certain times where it's like, sure, this is a silly rule, but it's the rule right now. And she knew what she was doing. And to do that and compromise your chance to be an Olympian and represent your country, like that's on you. So like, don't get mad at the people that are just applying the rules. If the rule was so bad already, you should have fixed it earlier. But hopefully like that was just an awakening moment to say like, all right, this should end.
Do you know how strict the doping list is? I have to get you that somewhere so that you can actually see it. On your laptop screen, it is like minuscule font, and you'll be scrolling for about a good 2 minutes. It is so strict during season when competition is on. I can't take ibuprofen. I can't take Tylenol. I can't take Advil because certain chemicals in that, if I were to get drug tested that day, have traces of chemicals that are in other PEDs that could flag me. So, like things for headache and, like just normal aches and pains that we take whenever we just need to get through like a moment, like could lead to a 4-year suspension and a $250,000 fine for athletes like myself. That's how tough they are.
That'll be a lot of late night shifts for your sister.
Yes, exactly. So when it all came down to that, I got my sled, had my races, got qualified, did everything like that. And so the first thing that the Jamaicans said was Luxembourg passed on the Olympics quota. They offered it to Jamaica. We've accepted it. Congratulations, Anthony. You're going to the 2018 Winter Olympics. It was a sigh of relief, and my family and I celebrated for about an hour until I got the text message later that said, oh, and by the way, we're sending you without a coach. And I was like, all year
Why is that the case?
They took my coach away just to punish me. They took my coach away. So they took my coach away, and I had been paying somebody personally to travel with me who was a former athlete that missed several Olympics because of politics in his federation, but was one of the best skeleton racers in the world. And he was coaching me, and he wasn't cheap either. So I would
Who is that?
Alan Blackwell. Shout out to Coach Alan Blackwell, Mississippi in the house. So I had, through all this season, paid him, had gone through all the rigmarole of having to do things on my own to then finally be able to get to an Olympic Games to have my federation tell me that, sorry, we're not allowing you a coach. And the coach gets to stay in the village. They get access to me at the track, and so they do stuff with video and stuff to help you be good. So I got on the phone with them. I was like, it's almost like you guys want me to fail. I was like, I qualified. I did everything that you guys wanted. Now, obviously, we had some hiccups during the season and some miscues and some arguments here and there, but I said, I kept my head down. I didn't say nothing. And then here, I was like, now what am I supposed to do? And they said, well, we're sorry. We tried to set you up with another coach. So they tried to partner me with my other friend who also was making history as the first skeleton racer from Ghana. And so he had gone through the whole rigmarole of whatever. And it's just like everyone here, I was like, racism? Oh, my goodness. I've experienced it overseas. I got jumped by a bunch of people in the Czech Republic just for being someplace because they didn't like me. I've had people tamper with my sled where I've almost flew out of the track because of hatred towards me. I've been told, go back to basketball, go back to track and field, stay out of our sport, and I had to bite the bullet, keep my head down and not say a word and just keep racing. And so I went through.
And where was that racism coming from? Like, there's specific people group. I know you said just one there.
The Czechs were one. The Swiss were very nice. The Austrians were really, really, really rude. Mm-hmm. I was like, the Germans were very polite. The Russians were very, very polite because they get a lot of flack themselves. So when they hear the Irish were awful, the Italians were awful, the Israelis were awful, and I'm just like, man, I was like, you guys should know out of everybody when you guys came here how rough it was for you in America to be a part of situations. I was like, we're just here to compete. But it was just people wanting other people to be excluded so that they had a better shot at things. And so I have experienced it a lot in ways that are very direct and egregious. But, I kept my head up. I did what I had to do because as a trailblazer, you have to clear a path. You have to get all the obstacles out of the way. You've got to make everything smooth for the people that are following you. And when you fall down and get hurt, you have to pick yourself up and keep going.
Do you feel like racism's ingrained in winter sports then specifically? Because it seems like a lot of these places, they're just like, we've always had just white Europeans do these sports. And then now you have Jamaica that's rolling in here. You have Ghana. And you think people like that's kind of ingrained in the culture, or is it just a few bad apples?
It's a few bad apples because, I say as an athlete, I hate it when black athletes go around saying that everything is racist because I will look at them and I'll be like, dude, I've experienced it hardcore from individuals here and there that have literally ostracized and try to make it unbearable so that you quit and you give up. So
do you feel like that makes you view America in a way that's like, well, everyone likes to pretend like there's systemic racism here in the States, and this is such an oppressive area, and racism's ingrained in this place. It's terrible, and we need to be apologizing for that every single day. But you look at other countries, and you're like, look at this place, guys. Like, you think you have it bad here, or you think that racism's running rampant in the States? Why don't you get out of your house and get out of your bubble and go overseas and check out what that's like?
Yeah, but people won't do that because to do that means that they have to come to terms or they have to apologize for things that they've said and done. And, people, these social justice warriors, these athletes that are getting paid millions of dollars and they complain and they say they want they want fairness and equality, they really don't because you look at Colin Kaepernick. The reason I can't stand that guy so much is because, one, that guy was adopted into a white family that gave him the best opportunities that he has now that he's literally complaining about. And first of all, he was a mediocre quarterback.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know we've talked about that quite a bit. I know
But-
we talked about that with Brian Urlacher. But, like, when you ask them, like, why are you doing these things? Like,
they don't have a reason.
Like, and if they do have a reason, like Colin Kaepernick did, it was like, well, I'm doing it for this guy that got shot by police. The guy had an 8-inch knife. He already stabbed somebody. He did not listen to police, and it was a justified shooting. And then you have the NBA. It's like, oh, we're doing this for Jacob Blake. You clearly don't know the situation at all, and that was another justified shooting. Jacob Blake, as we speak right now, just dropped his charges against the officer. So, like, all these things are coming true, but it seems like there's just a reactionary culture that we live in where it's like, looks like crap, smells like crap, I think it's crap. But it's just like, you are literally just looking at it from a specific lens of racism, and then you see places like the NFL who like to pretend like they're doing all this stuff to help out specific communities, and the NBA is the worst at it.
Yeah.
Like, I know they say as we speak right now, they're going to have preseason games in the United Arab Emirates where it is punishable by death to be gay. If you were part of the LGBTQ community out there, you are definitely not waving your pride flag.
Nope.
If you want to wave your pride flag, that is going to be your last day on earth. But they took away an all-star game in Charlotte in 2016 in the NBA because they had a transgender bathroom bill. Like, so it seems like there's just constant hypocrisy, and a lot of people just can't get out of their CRT, systemic racism, just worldview.
Well, these people don't want change, and that's why as an athlete I've always appreciated your podcast, because you've never been afraid to call it like it is. And too many people are too fearful of backlash or people not liking them. But the older you get as an adult, you realize it's not about pleasing everybody. It's about living justly before God first before you do anything for other people. You know, but these people, Colin Kaepernick, the NBA, the NFL, all these superstars that are getting paid a lot of money, they don't want change, because with change means that they don't have a cause to make just to complain about something. Colin Kaepernick doesn't want things to be fair because he's getting a lot of money right now to say how unfair things are. If things get fair, then he's out of a job. And it's just like, dude, you got your money to actually do something. Now that it's done, go enjoy the fruits of your labor. But that's not enough for him. It's not enough for people, you know, like all of these NBA superstars that want to like take a knee. And then you have superstars like Jonathan Isaac that says, you know, BLM didn't change my life. You know, the gospel of Jesus Christ did. And you saw what he went through with that.
Can't wait to have Jonathan Isaac.
Oh my
on.
gosh, Jonathan Isaac.
I guess we're dropping a little bit of a bomb right here. We're going to have him on the podcast, and that's someone that I know you respect to the utmost. I do too. Like, you're talking about real courage in actually blazing your own trail. You're a trailblazer yourself, and you have someone like Jonathan Isaac that says, I am sticking with my Christian convictions. This is who I am. This is where my value comes from. I don't care what anybody has to say from a worldly perspective. Here's my justification. And it's the word of God. And if you don't like it, take it up with God.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about being a believer in sports and just being a believer in general, is that I don't have to sit here and make excuses or try to explain something that God said. I just tell you what God said. If you don't like it, take it up with him. But I strongly suggest you think twice before you do that. It has never worked out for anyone that has tried to take on God. And, you know, that's the beautiful thing that I love about this. You know, through sports, through this experience, through life, and through everything else, he has been the one constant thing that has kept me grounded, kept me safe, kept me sane, and kept me encouraged when there was nobody else to do that. I can't tell you how many empty hotel rooms, Airbnbs, and airports that I've just had to cry in by myself because I was still doubting myself of whether or not this was something that was worth pursuing. But I stand here and I sit here as an Olympian, able to tell you that it was through faith, through hard work, and through the things that you guys at Turning Point promote that make life better. Not easier, but make it better. And it's through the actual physical task of doing the work that things get done and you actually start to see results. And so that's where I think in sports it's missing, because even now you see it in the NFL, they're saying that teams have to have a quota of black coaches. But I'm just like, you look at the teams that have black coaches, they ain't winning nothing. I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm just being real, but I mean, you know, I don't really feel like, you know, being hired by color should be like equality, because you have so many people, you know, like white, black, Asian, Hispanic, you know, like European that, you know, just have bad character. Why can't it be that? You know, Martin Luther King fought so hard that people would get past the surface to the heart of an individual, because that speaks more volumes than what you look.
And with sports, there's a extension of content of character. There's skill set. There's meritocracy. Sports are a meritocracy. The best person should get the job.
Exactly.
Whether you're a coach, an athlete, whoever it may be. And then now when you have the Rooney Rule that's been updated and you say that every single offense has to have a coordinator that's a minority or a female. And I could not imagine getting a job and thinking, I might just be part of this process just because of the color of my skin or just because I identify as a female. We got to remember that. And then there's this whole idea now, like, I don't want to see the football field look like America. I want the best players out there.
Exactly.
And if there's white cornerbacks that aren't good enough, you're not going to be on the field for an NFL team. We've seen one of those, one white cornerback in the past 20 years, I think. And I was with the Washington football team, Redskins, Commanders. Who did I was?
I like Redskins, man. Why couldn't we have just kept it that way? You mean like they even went to the local Indian tribe and said, is this offensive? And they're like, no, the Redskin was a warrior. Like, if that's the case, then you need to get rid of every helicopter that you called the Apache.
Look it up right now. There is some reservations that have sports teams, and they're called the Redskins across the country. Like, it's comical at this point. Let's take a quick little break and talk about food. You know, food's a huge part of the sports experience. I love it. That's why I have this dad bod now. But what if you could buy food you need for your watch party and donate to TPUSA without even leaving your home? You'd call me crazy. Call me crazy, but you can do that with Good Ranchers. They sell 100% American meat, and they believe so much in what we're doing right here, they will donate $50 to TPUSA on your behalf when you purchase from them. Good Ranchers delivers steakhouse quality beef. You know you gotta love that. Chicken, seafood, all the stuff you could ever want right to your door. And with our code TPUSA, that's TPUSA, they'll donate $50 to our mission while getting absolutely delicious food. Head on over to goodranchers.com/TPUSA today. Get ribeyes, New York strips, gourmet burgers, and so much more. Order now with promo code TPUSA, and $50 will be donated to our mission of sharing and preserving true American values. Once again, that's goodranchers.com/TPUSA. Get your box today. Promo code TPUSA, goodranchers.com/TPUSA. Do good while you eat good. How did you do in the Olympics, though?
I finished second to last. So out of 30 competitors, I finished 29th. But for a split second there, I was in first place for about 10 competitors. I was the very first one to go down the track.
I'm in first place. Put me on the podium.
So I was in first place. My friend from Romania almost passed me. Then my friend from Ghana didn't pass me. Then my other friend from France didn't pass me. And then the Korean Iron Man, they call him, Sun Bin Yun, the guy who has broken every single push start record, owns almost every single track record now. The dude is a monster. His calves are the size of your shoulders. The dude is just a nightmare to every competitor on the track. And so, he came down, and then that was where my short-lived, dream of being an Olympic medalist went. And so to further the story, after that whole experience happened, the Jamaican bobsled team had hired a German coach to actually help them qualify. They had partnered with a Japanese sled company that had never made sleds before, so naturally the sleds had a lot of kinks in it. They were going really, really slow, so the German coach bought with her own money, and it cost her about 65,000 euros, which is like 80,000 American dollars, to buy them a new sled. The Japanese then show up to the race where they're supposed to debut the Japanese sled on the World Cup circuit that's televised around the world. And so the girls take the hill in a German sled, and a week later, the Japanese slid a nice $4 million lawsuit to the Jamaicans. So it got really dicey. Then when they got to the Olympics, they told the coach that actually spent her own money, did all the stuff to get the girls qualified. They told her that, well, thank you for your service, but we're keeping your sled and you're fired. But if you want to stick around, you can do track analytics. And so she went to the press. She said she leaked all of the information. And this is like, if you really want a juicy scoop, you can read all of that on Google. And so they did all of that. Then she made statements saying, I'm going to go sabotage the sled. It's mine. It's my property. I tried to write them a professional letter to get it back. And she's like, they're not giving it to me. I'm going to go break it. So what did they do? This is after my race. And after all 4 heats were done in 3 days, that they come to me and they're just like, and by the way, they didn't show up to watch me race. They took my teammates away to a spa team bonding weekend with the entire federation that came there. So no one from my federation was there to support me. And my dad flew halfway around the world, got lost in the airport, but then finally made his way to the track. So that was so surreal to, when I sat in his lap at 6 years old, at the age of 28, to be there watching my dad watch me fulfill a lifelong dream that he had prayed through with me was so surreal. And so they told me, hey, she's gonna sabotage the sled. We want you to sit in the trailer with it. In first of all, it's this negative 30 something degrees in Korea right now in the winter because we're at high altitude in the mountains. I had to sit in that sled shed for 18 hours one day, and then I just left. And so they had me sit there because they wanted to make sure someone was with the sled at all times so that it didn't get sabotaged. Something went wrong, so they thought I sabotaged it. And then you talk about press. You have what's called the media outlet. So when you cross the finish line, you put your sled up, you get your jacket on, and then you walk in this maze kind of thing. And it's NBC, ABC, Fox, ESPN, then all these radio outlets, then all these talk shows, and all these news reporters that are going through, and it takes you about 45 minutes to walk through it. And so the entire time, it was never about how does it feel to be here? You're an Olympian. It's just so what's happening? The girl's coach, she fired. It's can you give us a story? Can you tell us the inside scoop? And I'm like, good grief, man. I was like, this thing is so ridiculous.
Do you know what it took to get here? Can I talk about my story?
And then this is where things got really interesting. So I am literally sobbing outside of the cafeteria, which is an old indoor football stadium, which is how big that everyone where we used to eat meals. And so you have meals from every single country for every single nation that likes to eat their food so that they don't have to drift off into things that they're not familiar with. I'm sitting there sobbing outside because I'm just having the worst Olympic experience ever. This old gentleman sits next to me. He's like, my friend, you're at the Olympics. He's like, why are you so sad? And I told him everything. He's like, have you eaten yet? He's like, let's go talk. This guy happened to be the president of the Puerto Rican Olympic Committee, and he was just like, why don't you come slide for us? And I was like, you're seriously going to recruit me here he's like, you clearly don't want to slide for these people. So he's like, come slide for the Puerto Ricans. You're half Puerto Rican. I was like, I am. And so now I'm Puerto Rican. I slide and represent the Olympic Committee of the island of Puerto Rico. And even though it is a U.S. territory, it is still its own country. So Anthony Watson has a big chip on his shoulder. And in 2026, he will be the first athlete to represent two small countries from the islands of the Caribbean that have never had an Olympic presence in the Winter Olympics, period. And I'm coming back a medalist. I don't care what it takes, but I'm going to get there. It's going to happen. Believe that.
Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Team Puerto Rico, baby. I'm going for him.
I know that was really random as heck.
So let's catch you all up. So Team USA, and then Team Jamaica, and then now Team Puerto Rico.
Team Puerto Rico.
So, do you think? No, we won't even go there. I was thinking about Senator Elizabeth Warren. Would she be able to, if they had a Team Native America?
Nah.
Would she be able to compete?
No.
How much do you have to be? 1/100th.
Well, the rules of the Olympics are you have to have proof of lineage. You have to either have a grandparent. It goes from your grandparent or your parent have to be a native of that country or whatever you want to identify as. And then, or you have to be a permanent resident or you have to have a passport to that country. So, yeah, she doesn't qualify for anything. So
at the end of the Olympics, though, if you had a chance to talk to some of those reporters about your story and you had to give it just snippet, what did you learn the most during that journey? What would you tell them?
The one thing that I kept repeating over and over again that I tell everybody is that the expert in something had to start somewhere. So I said, I started on this journey not knowing anything, but I said, I have had a group of people that have kept me grounded in my morals, in my values, and in my faith. And they have made everything basic and simple because that's the simple thing about everything. You as an athlete, John, you know that your coaches never made your workout plans complicated. They said, go here, do this amount of reps, X amount of times. Do here, do this X amount of times, X amount of times. People get lazy, and I'm pretty sure you saw that clip where that coach is just lazy people want to do nothing and win. But he's just people that are winning always have the fear that they're being lazy. So,
Amen.
That's the difference. You have a lot of athletes professionally now that are getting a lot of money to basically do nothing and complain. And when things don't get their way, they blame it on the skin color and the system. and then you have people like myself that have literally had the system and everybody else against you, and you still find a way to get it done. What's the difference? It's not skin color. I said it's attitude. It's attributes. It's character. It's the person who you are when nobody's looking. And that's the person that we don't talk to enough. That's the person that we don't call up enough, because we try to placate to everyone on cameras rather than being like, look, that person's got a deeper issue of whatever that they just don't want to admit to. So my whole thing in this whole entire process was, I am a Christian. I had a God-sized dream that required God-sized faith to accomplish. And that is the only thing that I can accredit it to, because outside of doing my regular reps, everyone else was doing more weight than I was. And it came down to who wants it more. And it came down to small little things here and there. Like the one person who was really bad and giving me like all the crap in the world, I remember this one race in Canada, he was beating me every single day in practice and rubbing it in my face. And, I kept my head down. I'm like, God, you really have to like help me with this. You created snow. You created ice. I was like, make my perception aware. If you helped Elijah outrun a chariot of horses, I was like, you can help me slide faster. Not only did I beat him, but I beat him by almost 2 full seconds, because in his run, he hit a curve and literally his sled flipped and he went backwards.
I was about to say, like, that's an eternity in skeleton.
It is.
It's a long
Literally,
time.
You win races quicker than this. Quicker than that. Quicker than a blink, quicker than a snap is how it comes down to the milliseconds. Like 0.00001 is where the difference becomes. And so it's all about perception, awareness, when to steer, when to let the sled go, when to just let it ride, or when to drop a toe, when to do all of these other things. And the thing that makes skeleton so phenomenal is you only in a week get 10 runs. So 2 runs a day in a 5-day period. 2 runs a day to go 1.5 miles at 85 miles an hour when your coaches can only film 2 curves, because you can't film the whole thing. Film 2 curves to tell you you're entering too early, you're exiting too late, you got to get here and you got to get there. You have to piece.
High in, low out.
Yeah. You have to piece so much together so fast in an allotted amount of time that people with awareness and like a really good sense of like space are the ones that excel. Like the physical ones are competitive at this push, but it's like they kind of fall apart when they hit and skid and do all this other stuff down the track. And so what I saw in that moment was I saw something that I hadn't seen ever in my life, which is I saw God defending me. I have seen God provide for me. I've seen God make a way for me, but I saw God defend me. And I was just like, and when God always defends you, not only do you feel vindicated, but you also feel sorry for the people that he's disciplining. And I was just like, and that's the beauty of, like being an athlete, but also being a Christian above that, is I get to do what God created me to do, but I didn't just want to take what I have here and use that to just be like, well, I'm an Olympian and look to get what I give. I respect you for what you're doing, and other people that do what you do, because it takes men of courage to actually stand up in the face of adversity, in the face of everything that is against pop culture, to say, this isn't right, here's the reasons why, and no matter what happens, I'm going to stick to my convictions, and I can't wait until you have this, on a blimp because of how big it gets.
Appreciate that. And I don't really feel like what I do is courageous. I feel like what I do is right. And I feel like what I do is truth. And we live in a world right now that people can say like, wow, can't believe that you say the truth. Like, what a weird world. Like, literally, like, I'm getting praised for saying the truth. I mean, there's plenty of times where I'm going to put out my opinion and, I'm going to grow. But for people to say that I'm courageous, I appreciate that very much. But I think basically I am just going off of God's calling. Like, I have been blessed to be put in this position here, just like I feel like you got blessed to be put in the position where you probably sometimes go through periods of life and you're thinking, God, why?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the wrong question to ask, because a lot of times where we have hardships and people even listening and watching right now, you're thinking, man, it's just hard to share my beliefs, or I don't like what the NBA is doing, or the NFL, or blah, 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 blah. And I'm just getting hated on for it. So like, why do people hate me so much? Like,
well,
literally, if you are a Christian, you are going to get hated on.
Yep.
Like that, you are going to have a tough life because you're countercultural. But what you need to be asking is, God, how?
Yep.
And I'm sure you probably got to that point too, where it's like, God, I don't know why this is happening. Why do people hate me? Why am I going through these financial
Well, I stopped
struggles?
asking that question because I remember I was having my devotions in Germany, and I said, God, why me? And then literally in my spirit, he said, why not you? But going back to what you were saying before, it's just like right now you see a lack of men in a lot of places because, one, people are afraid to be men. People that are men don't take their role seriously. And then you have people that don't even know what a man is. So, when it comes to someone like yourself, you're doing what's right naturally. But because it is so few and far between, it's like life to everybody else that gets to experience it. So, speaking from here, it's been an honor, it's been a blessing, and I'm just like, yes, now I'm finally on the breakaway.
And I appreciate you taking time and sharing these kind of stories too, because I think it's impactful. I don't think anybody should just say, hey, here's all my cards. Here's exactly what I've been going through, because a lot of people don't deserve to hear the intimate parts of your life.
Right.
But what they do need to hear is where your identity comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's where you do a good job of using your platform of, here's my story. I'm not known as Anthony Watson, the Olympian. I'm known as Anthony Watson, the Christian and truth teller, who happens to have an incredible athletic ability that he's worked really hard at to become an Olympian and to become an Olympian again and want to make that podium. So identity does not come from those rings.
If God is for you, who can be against you?
Amen to that. And I think the final thing too I want to wrap up here is you do a good job of instilling this into the next generation.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the next generation of athletes, they need to hear stories like yours, and they need to know where their identity comes from, and they need to know about hard work, and they need to know about discipline, and they need to know about just plain and simple in sports, you're going to get your ass kicked.
Yep.
Plenty of times, and that is what's going to build you up into the men that we need in society. I had plenty of times where I had coaches that I absolutely despised. I didn't like them, but I respected the heck out of them.
Right.
And that's what we need to see more is a lot of people are just getting coddled. And you need to go through the hard work. You need to do an extra rep. You need to do an extra wind sprint. You need to take the extra time if you really want to get to that level of where you're at. Because that's in every single aspect of life, mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Right.
If you're going to be complacent, that's the most dangerous place you can be. But you speak on different college campuses. And I know you're working on a little bit of a pilot here with Turning Point USA.
Yes, I am.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm not going to say Campus Crashers or anything. Yeah. But Anthony, you're working on a pilot right now, a little episode with TPUSA Productions.
I am so excited. I have been blessed with the opportunity to go to campuses across this beautiful country of ours to meet and talk to a bunch of different young people from different walks of life, different parts of the United States, different cultures, different styles, and I was able to film a pilot that highlights the lives of the students in the chapters that Turning Point is built on. Also experiencing and exploring the unique towns and cities and the history of it all that make that unique to the United States. So I'm really excited for everyone to see it when it comes out.
What gives you such a patriotism and such a love for this country? Is that the going to different places and traveling around, growing in appreciation for the freedoms that we have here?
Well, I love America. And even though I didn't get the chance to represent America in the Olympics, I'm still very patriotic because this is my home. And the same way that anyone feels about their home is that they don't want people that don't want to be here trashing it and abusing it. So, because I understand that if we lose America, where do we go? And America literally is in a fatal position, and what's going to salvage it or destroy it is the next generation that's coming up now. And so I wanted to have an impact on those young people to tell them, just not outside of sports, because not everyone's going to be an athlete, but the lessons that you learn in sports of working hard, pushing yourself, going a little bit further than most people, you can apply in work, you can apply in school, you can apply in family, you can apply in your life and in your circle of influence. So they have actually benefited me by showing me different parts of the world that I hadn't even known that were in my backyard. So I love young people. As a young person myself, it always broke my heart when I was looking forward to seeing an athlete or listening to them speak, and then they didn't show up because they weren't getting $50,000. So I told myself if I was ever in a position where I was able to use what I've done to help influence people, it would never be about that. It would always simply be for the real reason that Turning Point exists in the first place, and that's for the kids.
And I think that's such an admirable way of living your life because there's an aspect of service. Like that's the way you live your life is like, I want to serve the next generation, instill some of these values that have made such a difference in my life, in your life. So you're equipped to go into the next sports team you're on, the workplace, your church, wherever it may be. Final question I got for you is one of my favorite podcasts is Lewis Howes, The School of Greatness. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Right.
And he's fantastic. He played on the Team USA handball team.
Yeah.
Actually. So he used to play football, and he's got a cool little Olympic story. But he always asks people in a different way, but like, how do you want to be remembered? So after all your Olympics that you're going to go to, every school that you visited, every single church that you've been a part of and relationship, how do you want to be remembered at the end of your career?
Well, I'm already remembered right now the way that I want to be, and that's everyone that sees me, I'm happy. You know, I have no reason to complain. There are some things and some moments where I have to take a moment to deal with emotions and feelings. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, but I want it to be said that when people experienced Anthony Watson or interacted with me, they always felt better about themselves when I left. You know, and I want to love on people the way that God intended, which is giving your best to everybody, even when they don't deserve it, which has been a task in itself to practice. But, you know, I can honestly say now that with everything that I've done, my biggest thing is making other people feel better about themselves, because you've got very few people that actually go the extra mile to give. And that's what I want to be known as.
Well, you definitely make me feel better. That is for sure. And I know you make the whole productions team feel better here, and everybody you're around here at Turning Point USA. You just have a light about you.
I know that.
I didn't think that I would be going so hard for Team Puerto Rico as I am right now.
It's still technically Team USA territory.
I'm calling them Team Puerto Rico. Let's go Skeleton. But honestly, this has been an uplifting conversation, and I think we need more athletes like you, Anthony, that have a life of service while working so hard to reach the upper echelon of their athleticism. So, Anthony, really appreciate you being on. Everybody, still, thanks so much for tuning into the Breakaway podcast. Don't forget, subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify if you're just listening. Make sure you leave a 5-star review. We're also on YouTube. Subscribe, click the bell so you get notified for great conversations just like this. And when things get too spicy, we go over to Rumble. Also follow us on Instagram at TPUSA Breakaway. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Anthony, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
See you guys.
Jon Root is single, everybody.
Sing and listen sports. There you go. Thanks for listening, guys.